Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to the acclaimed podcast series called Dino Run. This is the only podcast series on the channel that uses the visual aid of an offline video game as a way to riff for a little bit, for like short little stints, you know? A very unique series thinking about it. But I thought I'd pop in for this episode of the podcast to talk about my favourite video games, because I've discussed it a few times, like what my favourite video games are, but I've never made like a concise list, and I still haven't, despite me literally going into this with like a clear topic in mind. I have not made a concise list on it, but the video games that come to mind off the top of my head here are clearly the ones that live rent free in my brain. So I thought I would riff and go through some of my favourite video games and discuss why they are. Now, I've discussed before, one of my favourite video games is Outlast, and I'm a big horror guy. So I like most. Well, I don't like most horror games, but I do like what I like. And if you're a horror game, I will definitely give you a day in court, regardless of how poorly it's been received. But Outlast is probably like one of the strongest, like in your face, like procedural horror games ever, and I even prefer it to Amnesia, despite the fact that I've never played it. I've seen footage of Amnesia, and thinking about it now, Amnesia seems like a really good game for me to play at some point in the future here on the channel. I definitely think that Amnesia is definitely on the to-do list for the channel at some point, because I have heard good things. But I guess I have history with Outlast, whereas I don't with Amnesia and stuff like that. So, but anyway, back on topic. My favourite game, or one of them, is Outlast, and it's kind of because of like the nostalgia of the time that it came out, and the fact that it came out when I was very young, way too young to be watching YouTube Let's Plays of that game, let alone playing it myself. But I did that nonetheless, much to my parents' chagrin. And it was a great time, because I was always a big horror buff growing up. I always liked watching horror movies when I was younger. Horror movies like Elm Street and The Thing, The Shining, Alien, all of those classics, right? But then also like Get Out and Hereditary when that came out, and the later like Alien movies like Covenant and Prometheus and stuff like that. Like, all that stuff was awesome to me, and I loved it to bits. So I of course was going to love a game that reflected those positive traits of horror movies in a video game format, because you're basically living through a fucking nightmare. And yeah, much as I loved Outlast, I also hated it because of how scary it was, right? Because I couldn't get through it sometimes. Like, there was so many points in the game when I would play it where I'd just have to like stop and like walk away because it was frightening me too much, you know, at times. And I think that's the fact that it's had such an impact on me for so long is why it's lived rent free in my brain. I think the story behind it is also brilliant, and I like that you can go through that game and you don't have to like discover like the fact files and like the backstory behind the asylum that you're trying to survive in. But if you do, then you get so enriched by like the different like lore details about like Mount Massive and like the Murkoff Company, and like also the character you're playing as, Miles Upshur, right? And also the monsters like Chris, or the pig guy or whatever, right? And all the other ones like the ghost and like the groom and all these other monsters that you encounter. That's a new record that you encounter along the way. Amazing game. And also the graphics haven't really aged that poorly either. They don't look perfect, but they still look okay for the time. And I think the iconicness of like the night vision like camcorder being like your point of view of the game is just something so immersive about the experience that does make you feel like you're really in that situation and like trying to survive. And all these different levels are so fun. Like, even the DLC with Whistleblower is great. And though I haven't played Outlast Trials, which is like this co-op version, I have, however, played Outlast 2. I haven't done it on the channel yet, but, and I emphasis on yet, I will at some point, hopefully. but I haven't played Outlast Trials because to me, looking at like footage of it, it didn't have like the same magic as the first or even the second Outlast game had. Much as I much prefer the first Outlast game to the second one. I can't deny how much different the Outlast Trials game feels like because it's co-op alone. It kind of loses a bit of the magic of feeling so helpless. I think that's why it invokes the terror. Is that you've not got anything to defend yourself with in Outlast, and you're not with your friends. You're all alone, just being tormented by all these just absolute just monstrous people and creatures in Outlast. And I think it's just so much more compelling as like a solo horror. And I think making it a co-op horror, I think Outlast Trials feels way too much like a Dead by Daylight or something like that, right? Than anything like Amnesia or Outlast. So that one's never really done much for me, I'll be honest, the Outlast Trials. But again, Outlast, brilliant. Outlast 2, pretty good. Not as good, but still pretty decent. I think the level design is not as cohesive and strong and as clear as the first game. But I do think the setting is brilliant, though. The setting is brilliant. The level design, not so much. But I still like Outlast 2. I just don't love it to the same extent as Outlast 1. But what's another horror game that I love to bits? Until Dawn is like a choose your own adventure game, and much like with Outlast, it's actually no, not like Outlast at all. It's kind of a horror game, but in the opposite way. Like, it very much tries to get you invested in the characters you're playing as, and not in the way that you're controlling them like you are in Outlast, trying to escape the asylum. In Until Dawn, there is this plot that you're unfolding throughout the gameplay, and the story is the main crux of the gameplay, is that you're affecting the outcome of the ending, and you're like choosing who survives, who dies, and trying to keep people out of trouble. But you're like swapping from one character to another, whereas Outlast is very much you're locked in first person, good luck. Whereas Until Dawn, there's a more cohesive and compelling story at the forefront, and I think that's its strength, is the story and characters. But I think the settings are great, the characters are brilliant, the acting, the story is great. The only thing that kind of lets it down a little bit is like the choose your own adventure aspect doesn't really have as much of like an impact on like the overall outcome of the story when it ends, outside of like the fate of the characters in question, right? Like the choose your own adventure aspect and you making your own choices that change the story events, they more affect the fate of the characters than the events in the story, which I suppose lends itself to a more compelling story. Because if it was more in flux and you could like make a choice of, oh, this character goes down here and then something different happens, then maybe it kind of falls out of control a bit and there's less like cohesion in the cause and effect aspect of the story, which is why I think Until Dawn overall in checks and balances is overall a perfect game by most measures. So, and it's certainly one of my favorites because it came out in a time where all of the best games were coming out. I think Until Dawn and Outlast came out within like a year of each other, I think, from those different respective developing companies. What a time to be alive with video games like that. Another favourite game of mine is Hitman Absolution, and I believe that came out like around the similar time, like 2013-ish sort of window, 2012 to 2014 sort of time frame. And Hitman Absolution was a big deal. And I've played it on the channel, and I won't bore you here with why I love it so much, because I have explained it ad nauseum in that Let's Play series, where I played the game all the way through because I did just enjoy it so much. Oh, so good. Such a good game. But what else? What other are my favourite games? I guess Minecraft is also in there probably, especially at the moment with me going through it and playing my own solo series for the channel. But I also obviously like, I guess, Black Ops 2 and Black Ops 1. Black Ops 3 to a certain degree, but only for the zombies mode. For reasons I've already stated in different videos where I play those games. But also, because of exclusively this channel, one of my also favourite games is Portal 2. Because I liked Portal 1 a lot when I walked through that, but it did feel like there wasn't as much additional content on offer then in Portal 2, and I think Portal 2's story was a little bit more fun and more wacky. There's more possibilities with it, and also the co-op mode in Portal 2 does help it because there's staying power to the game and replayability, right? So overall, Portal 2 is definitely a favourite. I don't know if it is my favourite, but it is so damn good. And then another one that does spring to mind in the favourite games category for me is definitely Iron Lung. And yeah, part of that is because of my bias towards like Markiplier and him being such an inspiration for me on a whole, really, as a person. Is he's made a movie about Iron Lung the game, and so I wouldn't have probably checked out the game if it wasn't for him announcing that he was going to make a movie about it. And he's since made a movie about it, and yeah, the game is great. That's all I'll say. I mean, it's horror, but it's not horror like Outlast. You know, it's horror in a different way. Like, it's more bleak, it's more isolating, way more atmospheric, and I think Iron Lung is a testament to like how important like sound design is in a game, because most of what happens in Iron Lung event-wise you don't get to see because you're cramped in this tiny submarine in a sea of blood, you know, on a dying star or whatever, and it's just like, what a fucking setup, what a good setting for a horror game. You could not feel more isolated from a video game than Iron Lung, I feel. And I think it's scripted events can get repetitive when you replay it so much, but it's so rewarding to unlock all of those achievements because you're going out of your way, because the navigational system of that game is so I mean it's so much to crack that when you do crack it, you feel like a fucking genius that you've managed to get the coordinates correct on the map and you're able to navigate the submarine through these trenches of this ocean of blood, and you just feel like a fucking genius while doing it because, you know, you're marking it off on the map without any visual aid of where you are. You're having to figure out your coordinates every few minutes just so you don't hit a wall or a monster. And yeah, the scripted events are creepy as well, and they do get you the first couple times, and I think it's a genius game, and there's no wonder why it has a cult following. I'm definitely part of that cult following now, I feel, and that's definitely up there in terms of brilliant games, really. But yeah, I mean, what else? I mean, I guess I really enjoyed the playthrough of The Forest. I like a good survival horror game, so I'm obviously going to be a fan of that. And then Raft was good fun as well. The formula of Raft was quite addicted. You know, it was quite addictive to play that one. I don't think it would be as fun on solo though, but it was a hell of a lot of fun on co-op with my friends. So yeah, I think that's a good enough spot to end off this episode here. I mean, in terms of other games, like, I do quite like Dead by Daylight. I think that's a good game. What else? I mean, I think Limbo was a lot of fun at the time. As I said, Portal 1 was also pretty good. I don't know, really. I think that there are a lot of great games out there, and obviously that's a very nothing statement for me to say, but it's tough. I mean, what else? I mean, Phasmophobia. That's another one that I definitely did have a lot of fun playing when I did, and that is a game that I want to get back into at some point and purchase myself on Steam when I have the money for it, because it's a good ghost hunting game, you know, and it does seem like a lot of fun. But yeah, that's a good enough spot to end off this episode. Thanks very much for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.